Manchester Airport. So these two guys probably need no introduction either. These two on the left and on the right, the far left and the far right, are two lads who were involved in the severely awful altercation with several police officers at Manchester Airport. They'd come in off a flight, there'd been an argument on the flight, apparently in Arabic and in English. The mother says that she was tasered in the face. Some are disputing that. There's a real to and fro here. But what we did see through that leaked, and thank goodness it was leaked, CCTV footage was the fact that the guy on the right, allegedly, he hasn't been charged, but he was wearing blue at the time. And you see him really, really going for a female police officer. And she had lacerations across her face to her nose and all the rest of it. Her nose was fully broken, blood pouring down. And at the time, I was quite critical of the police then, because I said, oh, look at this, it's diversity and inclusion. I think that was wrong to say that, because he fairly did go for her. I think in that scenario, she probably did the very best job she possibly could to keep law and order. And I said...
I mean, even the guys were struggling.
Well, yeah. I said if a group of white lads back from a holiday to Mallorca had smacked the living daylights out of a female officer at an airport, causing, as I mentioned, lacerations and a broken nose, do you think they'd be free? Do you think they'd be on bail? Do you think they'd be able to put on a press conference that, by the way, actually enables any jury who has seen this press conference to be unable to sit on that jury? So it calls all sorts of questions around the actual facility and facilitation of the court case, if there indeed is one, because we haven't heard any update, have we? And it says, and I said, this was a performative press conference that seeks sympathy for a vile pair of thugs. I said, I'm not convinced, and I don't think the British nation will be convinced either. But there are real questions here about, one, why this was allowed to be aired. You know, who gave this the go-ahead? Why was it all over the broadcast media? The lawyer, I assume he's been paid for via legal aid or something else. It's just a grotesque distortion of what that should actually be for. If I went around smacking a female copper, I can guarantee you, right? I can guarantee you, one, I wouldn't dare do it. But secondly, I would not be free to go around and do a press conference such as that. I would be told that would be a breach of contempt of court and all these other things. So, Chloe, do you see... We're going to get into it more and more as this live stream goes on. But you can see why people look at those scenes there and they feel anger for the way in which actually 2 weeks go by for these lads. But the lads that are involved in the riots that we've seen recently, when they were violent, some of them are already banged up now.
I mean, people will understandably be very, very angry at this, because what they're realizing is that all of the institutions that we have in a democracy that are meant to be fair and are meant to solve injustice and are meant to keep us safe, all of them are two-tier. It's not just two-tier police. We've got a two-tier judiciary, a two-tier government, a two-tier media, and we feel like we don't have any kind of institution left that is fair in this supposedly democratic society that we live in. I mean, Eunice, you did a good video the other day looking back to the differences in convictions between, for example, the guy who had the anti-immigration stickers getting 24 months in the clink, whereas then a guy who repeatedly raped a 12-year-old girl only getting community service hours and not spending any time behind bars. And it is just clear that we're seeing the same kind of thing happening again here. It's completely unfair. These guys should not be out in public, given that horrendous CCTV footage that we've seen.
Eunice, do you think there's a fear here that the police, Greater Manchester Police, under whose jurisdiction these people will be operating in, do you think actually there's a fear that they will be too scared, judging by the climate, to actually do anything about these guys, and that actually they're going to have a potential lucky break.
Yes, probably they will. And we can see it right now with the riots all over the UK. And I've seen videos, that video went viral. Why did that video go viral? There was a police officer kicking a minority guy in the ground in the face. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, or I think it was last week, we had the police attacking, white people, or as they call it, EDL members, literally attacking them in the street, taking them to the ground, beating them up. And that didn't make mainstream news. Why? I just don't get
Mm,
it. Same thing, like with the
Mm.
Islamists going out with machetes and knives, you know, attacking churches, and they provide security for the mosques. They do not provide security for the churches and synagogues. And I just don't understand what they're getting at. They're shooting themselves in the foot. I think we've become so weak and pathetic in this country that we cannot call a spade a spade. I'm not
yeah,
saying give preferential treatment to anyone. I'm saying treat everyone equally you know? And because of the Labour government that we have now, which I think is controlled by the Islamists and people like Sadiq Khan, and Keir Starmer is just this virtue signaling idiot. And I feel like he will do a lot of damage to this country over the long run. And until we get our act
yeah,
in order, okay, I'm all for immigration. I'm an immigrant myself. My family are immigrants, okay? However, I truly believe that we need healthy immigration in this country, people that want to assimilate, people that want to adapt. We cannot have unlimited immigration from people that come from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Syria with
yeah.
these extreme ideologies, and they come here, they don't want to adapt, they don't want to assimilate, they hate everything about the West, you know. And it's funny to me that countries like Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all these like my friend was in Dubai the other day. He was like, you can go out in the street, leave your car door on, leave the keys inside, and no
Yeah,
one's gonna
yeah,
touch your car.
you
No
can.
one's gonna touch your
Funnily
car.
enough,
But yeah, but in
but
London, if you walk down the street with a Rolex on, you have to be worried that someone might come and rob you. And that's the difference. And countries like Dubai and Saudi Arabia, they don't take immigrants from Afghanistan. And they're all Muslim. This is the thing. They're all Muslim, but they have come to this realization where we cannot have unlimited immigration. And if we do have unlimited immigration, it's going to take down society as a whole. They say import the third world, become the third world. And that's what's happening right now in the UK.
and I think there are a multitude of things, Chloe, that are happening right now to the Labour Party. You've got the economy potentially facing a dip because
Yeah.
there's been the markets have been shorted, and you first saw it, I think, with Bitcoin massively going down, and then there are rumours that Japan may well be in
Yeah.
real dire straits. It's been struggling with zero. Minus zero, actually, interest
Yeah.
rates and all the rest of it. Uh,
Mm.
and that will hit the global economy, which will then hit Britain and all these other things. And there may be, well, there already has been a shortfall on the FTSE 100. So economic issues, we already had economic issues, borrowing
Mm.
to a proportion of GDP is almost at 100%. Uh, they were already saying that they were struggling, they were going to have to raise taxes. That's going to go down like a lead balloon. And then this two-tier policing stuff and actually seeming to pit themselves against the people. And by the way, if you look at a map of the places where the riots are happening throughout England, there's also one in Belfast, but let's put that to one side. Throughout England, most of them are Labour Party constituencies. And that's going to
Mm.
be a real problem, I think, because 1 in 3 of the British people, according to a YouGov poll that was out today, which has been completely hidden and not talked about by YouGov, actually said that 1 in 3 support the protests. I mean, that's pretty stump. And by the way, I'm not saying I support the protests. I don't support violent protests or violence in any way. But I think 1 in 3 people saying that they support people going out there and protesting what has been happening to this country is a pretty damning indictment of Labour's position.
Yeah, I mean, there will be in these constituencies that are Labour, there will be some people who voted Labour thinking we're going to give a, you know, a fresh set of eyes a chance. The Conservative Party have failed us; they haven't bothered to bring down immigration, and these people may have thought, you know what, either I don't consider myself on the right enough to vote for reform, or I
Mm.
think Labour have a chance of sorting it out. They've got Labour in, and they've realised Labour aren't going to do anything. They're no different to the Tories, and they're just going to allow mass migration to continue. They're angry. Then you've got people in those constituencies where it's gone to Labour because people have voted reform, and again, these are people who they tried to use the democratic systems, i.e., non-violent, to bring about change. That failed, and now they are resorting to the streets. And I think, I'm quite surprised by that statistic saying that a third
Yeah.
support these protests. I'm sure some people there are people who are saying they support protest, but they don't necessarily support violence. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what question
Yeah.
they asked in that poll, but I think regardless, the number of people out doing violent things on the street is going to be a tiny proportion of the population. However, those are people that share grievances with a huge proportion of the country. Most of us are law abiding citizens who won't go out and resort to that, but we share the same grievances. And, as Douglas Murray rightly put it, it has been, a powder keg that has just been waiting
Hmm.
to explode. This was going to happen if the government did not bother to do anything about mass migration. So I'm not surprised to hear that, to be honest.
Yes, and Tracy there says not just two-tier policing, but actually two-tier reporting. I think that's right, and it's worth noting, of course,
Mm.
that the press overwhelmingly leans toward the Labour Party, all of the social media outlets and all these other
Mm.
things. There's been a lot
Well,
of censorship on them as well, hasn't there?
yeah, well, I mean that's what I was saying, is that all of the institutions that we have that normally are meant to be fair and meant to highlight injustice and solve injustice in our society, all of them seem to be two-tier. So if it's the case that you've got two-tier policing or a two-tier judiciary or two-tier Kia, you would expect the media to highlight it and try and put pressure on whatever institution it is to change. But we don't seem to have that anymore. It seems like every single institution that we have that's meant to be fair is pitted against us at the moment, and that's why people are. You can understand. I don't support any of the riots, but I understand why they feel like they need to do it. They feel like we have no other option. We've tried every peaceful option to bring about change, and nothing is happening.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.